starting with 1 million luck points. Chapter 501 Destroying His Spirit? Zhou sighed and looked at Chris. Chris, I want to ask you, what does fairness mean to you? After asking this question, Chris was stunned for a moment and looked at Zhou fiercely. What do you mean? He roared. At this moment, he was no longer a threat. He was already unable to defeat Zhou. As long as Zhou was willing, Zhou could defeat him at any time. However, before that, Zhou wanted to tell him something. A person who lived in such a family with such a background and enjoyed superiority that others could not enjoy in their entire lives should not talk about fairness. That would be too hypocritical. You can't answer? Alright, let me ask you this then. Zhou crossed his arms and looked at him coldly. When you were born in a rich family and enjoyed the advantages of your family, did you ever think about fairness? When you had the supernatural bloodline power and awakened a special physique, did you ever think of fairness? When you have absolute authority to control the life and death of ordinary people and can order so many people to work for you, have you ever thought of fairness? Have you ever thought about this? You enjoy these advantages and things that others don't have. But did you ever think about fairness? Zhou's words were like a bolt of lightning that pierced through Chris's heart, making him stunned. It's true that you have this talent and strength. It's also true that you have resources and authority that others don't. However, have you ever thought about what this has to do with you? Did you obtain this yourself or did your family give it to you? In the end, you're nothing. You're just like an ordinary person. You're nothing special. It's only because you enjoy what others can't get that you're used to it. At this moment, have you ever thought about how unfair other people's lives are? Zhou sneered with a mocking expression. Also, you're too arrogant. Do you think that just because you're from a rich family, have talent and the power of your bloodline, you can act so presumptuously? When you were young, you were superior to everyone. Does that mean that you're destined to step on everyone in your life? How laughable! Chris, you still don't understand. Without your family, you're nothing. I know that you think that just because you're a genius at a young age and have abundant resources, you can look down on everyone else. At the very least, you think that you can look down on those who don't have the same background as you, right? Zhou's eyes were filled with disappointment. He had seen too many people like Chris. This was a classic hypocrite with a double standard. You have never experienced the distress of an ordinary martial artist with no special bloodline or even the frustration of an ordinary person who is unable to become a martial artist. You have never experienced the hardship of accumulating points to exchange for cultivation techniques. You have never experienced the struggle other people go through just to survive. You haven't experienced any of this before. Who are you to say that it's unfair? Zhou looked at Chris and said indifferently. Although he did not have the qualifications to say these words as well, Zhou did not look down on other people the way Chris did. Zhou's words exploded in Chris's ear like a thunderclap. To be honest, he had never thought about the things Zhou just said. He only knew that he could get whatever he wanted. For him, cultivation techniques and money were too easy to obtain. All he had to do was work hard on his cultivation. However, he did not understand why he was still inferior to Zhou despite having so many advantages. Zhou saw that he was in a daze and sneered. Chris, I hope you can remember what you said today. It's fine even if you don't remember. That will be your own problem. However, if you keep looking down on people, I can tell you that you'll definitely regret it one day. Zhou looked at him and a saber appeared in his hand. He raised his saber and slashed down. Outside, everyone was waiting anxiously. At this moment, the cold system voice sounded. Student Zhou has won. The moment these words spread, everyone was shocked. At this moment, the virtual cabin door opened and Zhou slowly walked out indifferently. Luo Li and the others were all extremely excited. Zhou had even defeated Chris. In other words, Zhou now had a cultivation that matched the top 30. This was extraordinary. Everyone was surprised that he had reached this level in half a year. Compared to Zhou, they suddenly felt that they were no longer worthy to be called geniuses. Zhou is too powerful. What did I say? Zhou is a person who creates miracles. That's right. This is too. They were all shocked. On the other hand, Luo Li, Song Kun, and the others were very calm. They might have been very worried at first, but after learning that Zhou had won, they did not think much of it. This was because this person had always been creating miracles. They were already used to it. Zhou walked out of the virtual cabin. After that, Chris also walked out. There was no anger on his face, no other emotions, only absent-mindedness. It was unknown if it was because he had been defeated by Zhou or because of what Zhou had said. When the Western martial artists saw Chris like this, they hurriedly ran over with a worried expression. Paul even asked what was going on, but Chris did not say a word and just walked out by himself. He looked as if he was stupid. The Eastern martial artists were very surprised and somewhat puzzled when they saw Chris's appearance. Zhou, what's wrong with you? Did he get traumatized? It's just a loss. It can't be that serious, right? Luo Li could not help but ask. Zhou smiled. I chatted with him inside and discussed with him what fairness means. After Zhou finished speaking, Luo Li was stunned for a moment. She did not know why he had brought this up. However, Song Kun nodded and instantly understood. Perhaps Zhou did not only defeat his body, but also his spirit. After Song Kun finished speaking, Luo Li finally understood. Destroyed his spirit. Pfft. When Zhou heard this, he was immediately amused. Sister Luo, what are you thinking? It's just that his values are a little twisted. I was just trying to correct them. Zhou was extremely depressed. Looks like your words were quite a blow to him. Luo Li swept her gaze over Chris, who had lost his soul, and curled her lips. Chapter 502 Sun Yue, Xiaofu. The matter of Chris's defeat had caused an uproar. No one expected the outcome to be like this. The name Zhou once again resounded throughout the entire Battle God Battalion. However, Zhou no longer cared about this. He had also received Battle King An's secret letter to head to the ancient ruins. Regarding all of this, Battle King An naturally made arrangements. His explanation to the rest of the members of the Battle God Battalion was very simple: Zhou was carrying out a mission. No one doubted his words. After all, this was the Battle God Battalion's matter, so it was not appropriate for them to say anything. The person who took Zhou away was the assistant of the Battle God Battalion's Battle King An. His name was Sun Shan. This person's cultivation had reached the 12th grade heaven realm and was very powerful. He looked at Zhou and smiled. Are you Zhou? You look calm and not as domineering as I imagined. After Sun Shan saw Zhou, he could not help but smile. Zhou was stunned for a moment, not understanding what was going on. However, he still understood that the other party definitely knew about his situation in the Battle God Battalion. He looked calm, but what he did had always placed him in the center of attention. You can't blame me for that. Zhou scratched his head, feeling somewhat embarrassed. It's fine. If you're not arrogant, then you're wasting your youth. Alright, let's go. As Sun Shan spoke, he directly led Zhou away and arrived at an extremely hidden place. Zhou did not know where he was at all. He had been sitting on the fighter plane the entire time and could not see what was outside. When he landed, Zhou had already arrived at an extremely wide platform that was underground. There were already more than 20 people waiting here. There were men and women here. Most of them were as powerful as Zhou. However, Zhou did not know many of them and did not know where they came from. At this moment, seeing Zhou arrive, many of these people also revealed curious expressions. Clearly, they were also very curious as to where Zhou came from. Sun Yue, Su Xiaofu, come here. Sun Shan waved at two of the girls with beautiful long legs. Father! Uncle Sunday! The two beauties hurriedly walked over and said when they saw Sun Shan. Zhou sized them up and was somewhat surprised. He did not expect Sun Shan's daughter to be here. Let me introduce you to Zhou from the Battle God Battalion. After saying this, the two of them widened their eyes. Battle God Battalion Zhou. Wow, you're Zhou. The two of them said almost in unison. Zhou was also a little embarrassed. He coughed dryly and nodded. Zhou, don't mind them. Not everyone can enter the Battle God Battalion. The two of them couldn't get in either. Sun Shan smiled and explained, although the two of them didn't get in, they still know a little about what happened in the Battle God Battalion. Especially in the past half a year, your reputation has still spread like wildfire. Zhou also became embarrassed and coughed dryly, not knowing what to say. Hello, Zhou. My name is Sun Yue. You can call me Yue. Nice to meet you. Sun Yue, who was wearing a black tight suit, stretched out her hand and smiled. Zhou hurriedly shook her hand and smiled. Hello, Yue. Zhou, my name is Su Xiaofu. I'm also very happy to meet you. Su Xiaofu looked even sexier. Her figure was simply what all men desired. In particular, she was wearing a long dress that was vaguely translucent, making Zhou not dare to look at her. Zhou, Sister Su's family owns the world's largest auction house. If you need anything, just let her know. She's the chief auctioneer. Oh, right, she also has 3 other sisters. They're also known as the 4 great fairies of the auction world. Sun Yue smiled. Zhou did not know much about this auction house, but what Sun Yue said was very shocking. The world's largest auction house. These words were enough to impress anyone. Zhou could not help but look at Su Xiaofu and was very shocked. Who would have expected such a sexy beauty to come from such an illustrious background? In fact, my big sister, 3rd sister, and 4th sister are all here. When we enter the ancient ruins, I'll introduce them to you. Su Xiaofu smiled. Zhou coughed dryly. To be honest, he was a little shy from their enthusiasm. Although Zhou was usually very cheeky, he really did not dare to say anything funny in front of these 2 beauties. One was Sun Shan's daughter, and the other's family owned the world's largest auction house. Their statuses were much higher than his status as a mere student of the Battle God Battalion. Alright, I've introduced them to you today for a very simple reason. Zhou, after you enter, if there's any danger, I hope you can help them. When you come out, I'll repay this favor. After all, I only have this one daughter. Sun Shan said solemnly. Zhou immediately nodded. Since they were all Eastern martial artists, they naturally had to help each other. Moreover, not everyone was able to get a peak 12th grade heaven realm to repay them a favor. Moreover, the cultivation of these 2 girls was really not any lower than his. They were both 5th grade supernatural experts. Could it be that Sun Shan knew something? Don't worry, Secretary Sunday. I will. Zhou immediately said. Haha, alright, it's about time. Get ready to enter the ancient ruins. As Sun Shan spoke, he left, making Zhou puzzled. How are we supposed to enter? Zhou could not help but ask the 2 beauties. Don't you know? I thought you knew. When Sun Yue heard this, she smiled and explained. If you want to enter the ancient ruins, you need a special tunnel. Here, look here, and under your feet. After Sun Yue finished speaking, Zhou looked at his feet and his expression immediately changed. In this huge empty space, there was actually a huge array formation. It was filled with complicated symbols. Moreover, these symbols. Zhou knew them. Genesis rune. That's right, it was a Genesis rune. Zhou Hao looked at this array formation in disbelief as his head buzzed. We are about to enter another world, otherwise known as the Ancient Ruins. However, you probably also know that the place we're going to is the Moro race's territory. After entering, we still have to wait for the gate to open before we can completely enter their dimension. And this tunnel is connected to that area. After we arrive there, we still have to climb for a few days before the gate opens. Only then can we really enter the Moro race's territory. Sun Yue said it very clearly. Only then did Zhou Hao understand. By the way, Battle King told me that many people are going, but it seems like there are only a few dozen people here. Is this everyone? Zhou Hao could not help but say. Of course not. There are several similar array formations that are placed elsewhere. A total of more than 200 people will be arriving there. Sun Yue smiled and explained. Chapter 503 Mysterious Old Man. When Zhou Hao heard this, he was immediately shocked. He did not expect there to be so many people. More than 200 people, then why don't we just go there together? After Zhou Hao asked this question, he regretted it immediately and thought to himself that he was really stupid. Indeed, after Sun Yue and Xiaofu heard this, they smiled. Hehe, Zhou Hao, you're so silly. If we could go together, why would the Battle God Battalion waste so much effort? Of course it's because it's not possible. The spatial tunnel this time can't accommodate so many people. Sun Yue immediately covered her mouth and giggled, making Zhou Hao very depressed. He thought to himself that he was really a fool. Why was he so stupid? After the three of them chatted for a while, a strange fluctuation quickly spread from the space. It was a spatial fluctuation. Sun Shan's body also floated in midair as he spoke indifferently. The spatial tunnel has been opened. Everyone, have a safe journey. After Sun Shan finished speaking, everyone present had solemn expressions. Worry flashed in their eyes, but their faces still had determination. In the next second, the entire space lit up. Then, Zhou Hao felt a powerful teleportation fluctuation transmitted over. This power contained the power of Genesis runes. Zhou Hao took a deep breath and closed his eyes. Intense white light emitted from his surroundings, and teleportation fluctuations surged. Then, Zhou Hao felt the surrounding aura change. He suddenly opened his eyes, and a dazzling light flashed, making Zhou Hao unable to open his eyes. A few seconds later, he gradually adapted to this light. Then, his eyes widened in surprise. Everything in front of him disappeared and was replaced by a strange place. This place was filled with birds and flowers, filled with an ancient aura. The trees here were thicker than the trees in the real world. The aura here was also more refreshing than the aura outside. Moreover, the sky here was even stranger. There were 9 suns. That's right, 9. Zhou Hao thought that he had seen wrongly, but after seeing Sun Yue and Xiaofu's shocked expressions, he understood that he had not seen wrongly. Zhou Hao was very shocked and looked at everything in disbelief. Everything here was very unfamiliar. In the distance, there was a huge stone gate that was about 100 meters tall. This stone gate emitted a strange fluctuation. Although Zhou Hao did not know what it was, he could sense that it was probably the gate to the Moro race's territory. In other words, they could only enter via this stone gate. And behind this stone gate was probably the territory of the Moro race. Zhou Hao took a deep breath. At this moment, several huge light barriers also emitted a strange light. Then, after the light disappeared, dozens of people appeared. Looking around, there were 7 to 8 such balls of light. Looks like they've also been teleported over. Zhou Hao looked at these people and took a deep breath. Sun Yue and Xiaofu also saw it. At this moment, they suddenly said to Zhou Hao, you have to be careful of these people. It's very likely that there are spies from mutated beasts among them. Even if there aren't, the martial artists from the East and the West are not as united as they seem on planet Earth. Do you know that? Zhou Hao nodded. As long as there were people, there would be grudges. He had long understood this, so he did not think much of it. All right, Zhou, I'm going to meet my companions. I hope we can encounter each other in the Moro race's territory, all right. At this moment, Sun Yue suddenly spoke. Zhou nodded and watched her leave. Just as she left, Xiaofu also looked at Zhou and said, the people from our Wangxiang auction group have also arrived. I also have to meet them. Zhou, be careful. Xiaofu bade Zhou farewell and left. Zhou was also bored after they left. He did not know many people here. However, there were also many solo participants here. Be it those from the east or the west, they all kept their distance. They must be worried that something would go wrong. It would still take a few days for the stone gate to open. After Zhou entered, he felt that he should also look around. Therefore, he did not stay near the stone gate. There were many people who shared Zhou's thoughts. They also soared into the sky. This stone gate was very large. Even if one was 50 kilometers away, one would still be able to see it. Therefore, they were naturally not worried about losing sight of it. Zhou also identified the direction and began to stroll aimlessly. This place was very, very large. Zhou could not see the end of it. Zhou kept feeling that this place should be like another world and not just a separate space. Zhou felt that the place was very strange. However, since he had come here, he naturally had to familiarize himself with it. There were no living beings here, only plants. Zhou saw many plants he had never seen before. After collecting the specimens, he placed them in his backpack. After a long time, night fell. Zhou found a place and casually lit a fire. He had brought a lot of delicious food with him this time. Some of them were edible, and some of the ingredients needed to be cooked. Now that he had the time, Zhou decided not to make things difficult for himself. Therefore, he took out an entire chicken and began to roast it. I haven't camped in a long time. When I go back this time, I have to find an opportunity to camp with Dad, Mom, and the others. Zhou smiled and roasted the chicken leg. However, at this moment, Zhou felt a strong wind approach. He subconsciously turned around and was stunned for a moment. There was actually someone sitting beside him. To be precise, it was an old man. A white-haired, sloppy, and tattered old man. Zhou's expression immediately changed. This guy's strength. Although he was roasting the chicken leg, Zhou had always been paying attention to the surrounding aura. He had even spread his mental strength to cover his surroundings, but he still did not detect this old man. This surprised Zhou a little. An old man. Zhou was somewhat nervous. Logically speaking, the people who came here should have cultivation levels below the 5th grade heaven realm. It was simply impossible for a person with this level of cultivation to escape Zhou's detection. However, this person had done it. Either this person had surpassed the 5th grade heaven realm, or this person had a strange ability that could allow him to escape from his detection. Other than that, there was no other reason. Zhou looked at the old man nervously, but the old man looked at Zhou's drumstick and swallowed hard. Do you want to eat it? Zhou was stunned for a moment before handing half of the chicken to him. The old man held half a chicken and immediately wolfed it down. He even chewed the bones into pieces. When Zhou saw this, he narrowed his eyes as a ridiculous thought appeared in his mind. Chapter 504 Egg. After this ridiculous thought appeared, Zhou gasped. He looked at the old man nervously, feeling a little afraid. This old man was sloppy and did not look like a martial artist who had entered from the outside world. Even so, what cultivator would be this hungry? Moreover, it's only been a day since they arrived. Moreover, it was precisely because this person's cultivation was hidden that Zhou could not detect him. After all, even if the other party was someone above the 5th grade heaven realm, Zhou could still be able to sense him. However, if not for the breeze, Zhou would not have noticed this person at all. Zhou looked at this old man, and a jealous and dangerous feeling rose in his heart. The old man wolfed down the chicken and quickly finished it. He hurriedly looked at the other drumstick in Zhou's hand. Zhou was somewhat worried and hurriedly handed the drumstick over. Seeing this, the old man held it in his hand and began to eat. He ate the drumstick as if he had not eaten for decades. Zhou saw this and was actually very afraid. However, after the old man finished eating, he burped and exhaled comfortably. Then, he grinned at Zhou. Thank. He spat out these 3 words with difficulty and smiled. Clearly, he was very happy after having eaten the chicken. Zhou looked at the old man and relaxed a lot. He guessed that this person probably wouldn't hurt him. After all, if he still showed such an expression after eating his food, he probably wouldn't attack him. Zhou also became bold. He looked at the old man and could not help but ask, "Senior, are you from this space?" After Zhou finished speaking, the old man suddenly smiled. He looked at Zhou and asked, What do you think?" Zhou did not expect the old man to suddenly say this. He could only bite the bullet and say, "I think you should be from here." After the old man heard this, he nodded and looked at the sky disconsolately. He sighed, and then his gaze revealed confusion. He shook his head and nodded before smiling again. "It has changed, everything has changed. It's wrong, everything is wrong, this place is an ominous place. You shouldn't have come. I can't remember what happened in the past. Who I am, where I am." This old man suddenly became excited. Zhou immediately frowned and looked at him in surprise. In the next second, the old man soared into the sky. He was crazy and talking nonsense. He kept saying that he had changed and that something had changed. Zhou was very worried and immediately followed. However, he realized that the old man was very fast in the air. He was not flying, but walking. With every step he took, he traveled dozens of kilometers. This speed was really shocking. Zhou was shocked. He looked at the old man's speed and the strange footsteps and was extremely shocked. This speed! Zhou did not dare to believe it and was very shocked. He hurriedly followed behind. However, how could his speed be a match for this old man? He could only watch as the other party got further and further away. Zhou sighed and could only ignore him in the end. He turned around and returned to the place he was camping at. However, just as he arrived, Zhou was surprised to discover that the old man had returned. He was holding an egg in his hand. This egg kept thumping. It was very strange. Zhou was stunned for a moment and hurriedly walked over. "Senior. SHH. The old man immediately shushed and pointed at the egg in his hand before whispering. "Little guy, I just ate one of your chickens. I haven't eaten that for a long time and I also don't like to eat for free, this egg is for you." As he spoke, the old man placed the egg on the ground. However, in the next second, the old man suddenly attacked. Before Zhou could even see his movements, he felt his finger being sliced open. Then, a drop of blood dripped onto the egg. Immediately, a strange feeling appeared in Zhou's heart. After doing this, the old man said, "This egg is yours." Zhou looked at the egg nervously and was a little worried. He did not know what the old man had just done. Could it be that the old man was using his blood to feed this egg? Also, what was in this egg? He was really afraid that an alien would suddenly hatch from it like in those science fiction movies. Zhou looked at the old man and asked nervously, Senior, what's inside?" The old man looked at Zhou and took a deep breath. "A god." When Zhou heard this, he was shocked. A god? Were there still gods in this world? Wasn't this too ridiculous? "Senior, don't tease me. How can there be gods in this world?" Zhou was a classic example of an atheist. Although he had many heard all battle gods and whatnot, these were only titles. In Zhou's cognitive ability, the gods should refer to figures like the Jade Emperor and the Buddha ancestor. How could there be such a person in the real world? The gods I'm talking about are also not the same gods you're talking about. It's a kind of spirit body. It's also the greatest secret in this space. Back then, 100 of our people came here for this thing. However, after so many years, all my companions died one after another. I was the only one who was able to find it. The old man looked at this and could not help but say. When Zhou heard this, he was stunned for a moment before saying, You're saying that you're not from here. Could it be that you're also from Huaxia? The old man nodded. You can say that. I'm from the same world as you, but I don't know how long I've been here. After so many years, I've long been exhausted. If not for my stubbornness to live, I'm afraid I would have died. This egg is something that the Moro race worships. As for what it is, I actually don't know either. However, this egg is very strange. I can't tell exactly what it is. Moreover, its heartbeat has been increasing recently. I think it should be born soon. After the old man finished speaking, he looked at Zhou and said, You don't have to worry about me. My bloodline has long been exhausted. After I go out, I'll also die. Moreover, I've lived here for a long time. Now that I have feelings for this place, I don't want to go back. In addition, this Moro race is a mental strength race. Their inheritance is related to mental strength. I think this egg can help you. Therefore, I'll give it to you as a repayment. As long as you drip your blood into it, you can make this thing recognize you as its master. Therefore, that's why I did what I did just now. This thing is yours now. You're its master. After saying this, Zhou was shocked. He gaped at the old man in surprise and was speechless. Chapter 505 Frogs and Jell-o? Zhou was shocked when he heard the old man's words. He looked at the egg worriedly. To be honest, he did not really want it. Little guy, don't be afraid. Don't worry, I've seen this thing before. Other than being a little annoying, it won't do anything to you. Moreover, it has lived for a long time. After waking up in this era, it will only recognize you as its master. Once it recognizes its master, its life will be at stake. You don't have to worry. After the old man finished speaking, he did not waste his breath and left. Zhou looked at the egg. It was the size of a wash basin and he did not know what could be hatched from it. However, no matter what it was, since it had already been given to him, Zhou could only accept it. Soon, it was the day the stone gate opened. There were 100 people standing in the entire space. Zhou also walked over and stood in a corner, looking at the stone gate in the sky. He did not know much about this stone gate, but since he could enter, he did not have to care. Humph, I didn't expect so many people to come. At this moment, Murongsun's voice sounded in Zhou's mind. Zhou was stunned for a moment. When he heard this voice, he hurriedly said, Senior, do you know these people? Of course. Back then, I had a 12th grade Heaven Realm cultivation and was one step away from reaching the Saint Realm. On planet Earth, the Saint Realm is the true ceiling. There aren't many people who can reach it. Murongsun's tone was arrogant. After Zhou heard this, he also understood. After all, the first ceiling of human combat strength was a 12th grade Heaven Realm. The cultivation level above this was comparable to a god. You know Sun Yue is from the Sun family. Their family has inherited the ancient Azura sword dojo. You probably don't know, but the sword techniques of their Sun family are very powerful. I also know that the 4 sisters of the Sui family, the ones that manage the world's largest auction house, cultivate the same demon technique as their previous generation. Murongsun said directly, making Zhou stunned. Demon technique? What do you mean? Murongsun said indifferently, the Sui family is divided into 2 factions, male and female. The male cultivates yang strength and is extraordinarily domineering, while the female cultivates a feminine cultivation technique that has its own charm. Not many people know about this, but every year, the Sui family will choose 4 talented women from the 4 families to cultivate the Sui family's secret technique. I don't know what this technique is, but it has a demonic aura and a charming feeling. These 4 talented women happen to be the 4 sisters that manage the auction house. They're quite good at it too. Usually, when it comes to things that are worth 1 billion yuan, they are able to double or even triple the price. Anyway, there are only 4 people per year who cultivate this technique. They all cultivate the same cultivation technique and evolve it into 4 different forms. There's no point for me to tell you any more. You need to witness for yourself to understand. Mirongsun kept Zhou Hao in suspense, making him really curious. Also, you don't know much about the Moro race either, right? Actually, I don't know much either, but I do know that the strongest mental strength masters in ancient times were all from the Moro race. Their mental strength is not something that an ordinary race can achieve. You haven't entered their space yet, so you still don't know. You'll know when you enter. Mirongsun remained silent after he finished speaking, making Zhou Hao even more curious. Soon, the stone gate opened. The moment Zhou Hao saw the stone gate open, many people's expressions changed. No one dared to enter first. Instead, they were guarding against each other. Zhou Hao frowned. Looks like the various organizations and families are really afraid of each other. Zhou Hao could tell that although these people appeared harmonious on the outside, it was different when they were in this ancient ruin. After all, not only was there a huge opportunity here, but there was also a huge danger. It was only natural for them to be afraid of each other. It was hard to say what would happen if someone attacked them behind their backs. However, although no one dared to move rashly, someone still began to move after a while and slowly walked into the stone gate. Behind the stone gate, everything was covered in light. Zhou Hao was also very nervous, but he still waited until everyone had entered before slowly walking in. After he passed through the white light, his expression immediately changed. In front of him was not a world he had seen before at all. Instead, it was a distorted and strange place. To be more specific, it was like a Picasso painting. It was very abstract. The trees were angular and the 9 suns remained unchanged. The clouds in the sky were also square, and the sky was like a canvas. It was too strange. This place is really strange. Zhou Hao could not help but say. This is the space of the Moro race. They cultivate mental strength, so it's said that the territory of the Moro race is a manifestation of mental strength. All of this is being controlled by someone. You can think of this place as one's mental world. Perhaps you will understand it better this way. Mirongsun spoke at this moment, and his words stunned Zhou Hao on the spot. A person's mental world? Is this fake? Zhou Hao immediately said. It's not fake. It's just that they live in such a world. Many things are not what you see. Your eyes can deceive you, after all. And this is the strange thing about mental strength. Do you understand? A mental strength master can show you a ball of fire but it will feel cold when you touch it. They can also show you a piece of ice but it will feel even hotter than flames when you touch it. Do you understand now? When Zhou Hao heard this, he was really shocked. This was the first time he had heard something like this. He was very surprised. However, although he was surprised, he still adapted. Zhou Hao swept his gaze around and was surprised to discover that there were clearly more than 200 of them who had entered this mental world together. However, why was he the only one in here? Where were the others? Could it be that the world everyone entered was different? Zhou Hao was very surprised, but even so, she still hurriedly sped away, wanting to find a place to see if there was anything to gain. However, at this moment, Zhou Hao was stunned for a moment and hurriedly took out the egg. At this moment, the egg emitted a hot light. Then, the eggshell shattered. Zhou Hao was frightened and hurriedly retreated more than 10 meters. He looked at this thing quietly. If there was any danger, he would immediately escape without hesitation. The egg shattered and emitted a strange light. Then, Zhou Hao's eyes widened. This was because he saw two things jump out of the shattered eggshell. One of them was a frog in a red cloak and sunglasses. However, this frog was like a human. It stood on its feet with its hands behind its back, looking like it was looking down on the world. One of them was a squirming grey jelly-like thing that looked a little disgusting. Chapter 506 Two Idiots. Zhou Hao widened his eyes as he looked at these two things. He was shocked. Damn, another epoch has passed, right? Damn it, I'll think of a way to get out of this star system sooner or later. Otherwise, I'll never be able to replenish my essence energy and can only sleep. Zhou Hao was even more surprised when the frog suddenly spoke. Humph, you toad. I don't think you deserve to complain. If not for you, would I have been trapped here? Humph, why did you say you found the origin source grounds when all you found was this god-forsaken place? You're really trash. The jelly also spoke, shocking Zhou Hao. I'm trash? If not for me bringing you out of planet M8, you would have become their nutrient. Humph, don't forget that you're the divine soil of the Genesis world. You're incomparably precious. If they obtain you, they can melt you and use you to refine divine artifacts that surpass the cosmic level. The frog snorted coldly in disdain. Bullsh**t, do you really think they can capture me? I'm a divine soil expert. I can easily devour them. The jelly-like thing had a disdainful expression. The frog could not be bothered. At this moment, it looked at Zhou Hao and was stunned. Yo, little child, you're the one who woke me up in this era, right? Not bad, not bad. Why do you have the aura of a Genesis rune? Are you a descendant of that bloodline? At this moment, the frog looked at Zhou Hao and suddenly spoke. As soon as it finished speaking, it immediately stunned Zhou Hao. No one knew about his Genesis rune power. At the very least, no one was able to tell at a glance. How could this frog be able to tell? At this moment, the frog was very curious. It jumped to Zhou Hao's side and pushed its sunglasses down, revealing a pair of green bean-like eyes that looked carefully at Zhou Hao. Kid, you're quite something. You even have traces of that system on you. Not bad, not bad. I'm very satisfied with you being my master in this era. Don't worry, I'll protect you. The frog kept talking, making Zhou Hao confused. He did not understand what it was talking about at all. Humph, Toad, stop acting cocky. You're just a broken shell. Your essence energy has been exhausted, so how are you supposed to protect anyone? At this moment, the white jelly said. Damn, you useless thing. Do you think you're in any place to criticize me? You're nothing more than a pervert who enjoys watching other people shower. Also, you can't even differentiate between male and female. I can tell you right now that you've been peeping at men this entire time. The frog immediately spoke with disdain. Damn, do you want to bet with me? Of course I know how to differentiate a male from a female. I bet I can tell if this one's male or female. As he spoke, the white jelly directly jumped up. Its body transformed into a small white figure that jumped in front of Zhou Hao and looked at him carefully. You have a nose, eyes, and a mouth. You're a male, right? The white jelly looked at Zhou Hao and sneered. Zhou Hao was confused. Although it was right, what did it mean by that? Could it be that he had seen a woman without a nose, eyes, and mouth? Seeing Zhou Hao's expression change, the white figure's expression immediately shook and it hurriedly changed its tone. Hi, I was just joking with you. Little girl, you actually can't take a joke. Alright, I won't tease you anymore. You're a female, right? As it spoke, the white figure acted as if it was right and looked at the frog. The frog revealed a disdainful expression that simply made the white jelly go crazy. Is it wrong? How can it be wrong? I just said that she was a man and her expression changed. It must be because I was wrong the first time. Therefore, I'm certain that she's a female. Don't try to lie to me. I'm smart. The white jelly was immediately displeased. Zhou Hao, who had been staring at the two of them, became confused. Was it so difficult to distinguish between a man and a woman? With his masculine appearance, it should be very easy to tell, right? Could it not tell? TCH, you still haven't improved after so many years. You're really trash. The frog snorted coldly and did not look at the white figure. Instead, it looked at Zhou Hao and nodded. It was as if it was glad that Zhou Hao had confused the white figure. Therefore, it immediately arrived beside Zhou Hao and jumped onto his shoulder. You're not bad at all. I'll accompany you in this life. Let me introduce myself. I'm the first golden toad to be born since the birth of the ancient star. Zhou Hao looked at its green skin. It did not look like a golden toad at all. Cough cough, not all golden toads are golden. I'm a golden toad from the ancient star at the end of the universe. But naturally, you wouldn't know anything about that. Whatever. After listening to what the frog said, Zhou Hao could not help but feel that something was wrong. *T, you're just a toad. Don't think I don't know that there are beings that look like you that live in ponds and smelly ditches. I secretly asked others and they told me that you're just an ugly toad. The white jelly directly exposed it, making the frog very angry. It jumped down and immediately attacked. It punched the white jelly until it could no longer maintain its human form and turned into a pile of mud. You're just a pile of mud, yet you still dare to be arrogant with me. After doing all this, the frog jumped onto Zhou Hao's shoulder again. It smiled and said, "Kid, do you want to rule an entire star system? Do you want to be respected by all the races? Do you want to know the profundity of life? Do you want to know the end of the universe? As long as you want, I can let you have it easily. For some reason, I feel like you're an old friend despite meeting you for the first time. *T, stop lying. You're just a toad. Sister, don't fall for his trap." The white jelly was still unconvinced. Although it could not transform into a person, it still opened its mouth and cursed. The frog was furious. This time, it was really angry. Without saying a word, it took off the red cloak and stuffed the white jelly into it. Then, it wrapped it tightly and turned it into a ball before throwing it on the ground and ignoring it. When Zhou Hao saw this, he pondered. These two guys shouldn't be from planet Earth. At the very least, I've never seen a frog speak. Although mutated beasts can cultivate after the global mutation and many of them can speak after reaching a certain level, this is the first time I've seen a frog that can speak whose cultivation I can't see through. And this white thing that called itself a divine soil expert also seemed to have a powerful background. Zhou Hao thought to himself as he tried to figure them out. The frog looked at Zhou Hao and said, "Hey, stop spacing out. Do you want to rule a star system, be respected by all races, and explore the mysteries at the end of the universe?" Chapter 507 Powerful Frog. Zhou Hao really did not know what this frog meant, so he thought for a moment and said, "Are you speaking the truth? Damn, you don't believe me." After the frog heard this, it was immediately displeased and said excitedly, "It's not that I don't believe you, but you have to convince me first. Otherwise, how can I believe you?" Zhou Hao said helplessly. Without any evidence, he would not believe it. "Humph, you're just a toad. Stop showing off. Look, he doesn't even believe you." The white jelly seemed to have seized the opportunity and immediately mocked. "Damn, I'm an ancient golden toad, a life form born from an ancient star. From the universe to the abyss, there is nothing that I don't know. How dare you not believe me?" The frog was very excited as if it had been insulted. Zhou Hao was stunned for a moment. He was just stating a fact. Why was the other party reacting so strongly? However, Zhou quickly guessed. This white jelly probably really could not distinguish between men and women. Otherwise, it would not have said that he was a woman after examining him so carefully. Also, this frog seemed to be very powerful and knew everything. However, its emotions were unstable and could easily fluctuate. Most importantly, it hated it when one did not believe what it was saying. A scheme formed in Zhou's mind and he prepared to test it. Of course, how could it be possible for you to have such great ability? If you had such ability, why would you still be here? The frog snorted. Humph, I was born at the end of the universe. Many years ago, I learned of a secret: as long as I find the origin of the universe, I would be able to see through the mystery of life. Thus, I began my search. After figuring some things out, I eventually found this place. The frog told Zhou about this, but Zhou did not care. I still don't believe that you are very powerful. After all, there's no way to verify this. Who knows if you are telling the truth or not? Zhou was constantly paying attention to him. He noticed that after saying this, the frog was even more furious. No way to verify it? Humph, you're not qualified to verify it, but I can let you know now that everything I said was true. As it spoke, the frog opened its mouth and spat something out. It was a scroll, and it was very big. Zhou suspected that such a huge scroll was probably 10 times larger than the frog. How exactly did the frog take it out? This is a physical cultivation technique. Take a look. I created it. The frog threw it directly to Zhou. It looked very arrogant. Zhou looked at this scroll and opened it. At first glance, Zhou was shocked. This was indeed a good cultivation technique. Although Zhou did not know where it came from, he had tested it with his system. This was a cosmic level cultivation technique. Its name was Cosmic Body. Since you're a martial artist, you should know that some martial artists have special physiques, right? However, I can tell you that their physiques are all distributed from this cosmic body. This cosmic body is the ancestor of all special physiques. If you master it, it won't be a problem for you to plunder a few star systems. The frog was very smug. After saying this, Zhou was shocked and in disbelief. Seeing Zhou's expression, the frog was very happy and sneered. Do you believe me now? Zhou looked at this cultivation technique and felt that such a powerful cultivation technique was definitely very difficult to learn. Therefore, he still said, although this cultivation technique you gave me is powerful, I don't know how to cultivate it. Unless you tell me how to cultivate it. This cultivation technique was a physical cultivation technique and was not a cultivation technique like the Shadow 7 Sabers. Therefore, it was impossible for him to directly use the Heaven Dao software to learn it. Therefore, Zhou naturally placed his hopes on the frog. Humph, do you think this cosmic level cultivation technique is so easy to cultivate? With your current talent, you won't be able to cultivate it at all, the frog said with a pout. If I can't cultivate it, then why did you give it to me? Humph, how am I supposed to believe you like this? Zhou blinked and said deliberately. Do you think it's so easy to cultivate? This is something that can only be cultivated by someone who has surpassed the first, evil life form. Do you think someone like you is capable of cultivating it? Even if you cultivate now, it will be useless. The frog said bluntly. First level life form? What does that mean? Zhou could not help but ask. According to your planet Earth, you're a genius with an extraordinary bloodline. According to our calculations, you're only a 5th level life form and far inferior to the 1st level life form. A 1st level life form's cultivation is already comparable to yours the moment he was born. After the frog finished speaking, Zhou was stunned on the spot. Wasn't it simply too heaven-defying for one to be able to match his current cultivation at birth? Humph, you're surprised, right? However, the boundary of this life form can still be broken. As long as you absorb the cosmic energy, you can slowly increase it. Your human race on planet Earth can already be considered to be a relatively good life form. Your mortal life form is at the lowest level, the 10th life form. For you to reach the 5th level, you probably cultivated and even used some treasure to enhance your body, right? If I'm not wrong, it must be some body tempering fluid, right? Zhou was shocked. After all, he had never told anyone about this before. Yet, the other party could tell at a glance. So what? I'll only believe you when I am able to cultivate this cultivation technique. Zhou blinked and could not be bothered. He immediately identified the direction and sped away. What are you going to do? You don't even know anything about the Moro race, so why are you wandering around? The frog hurriedly stopped Zhou and could not help but say. Are you familiar with this place? Zhou could not help but ask. Nonsense, I forgot when he became my master, but one of my masters was the leader of the Moro race. I was the one who taught him his mental strength power. By the way, he also knows a little Genesis rune power, but he's not as orthodox as you. After the frog finished speaking, Zhou was even more surprised. He directly asked, then do you know a person called Huang? Are you talking about Huang? Humph, he was also my master. The frog's words frightened Zhou. Huang was also your master. Zhou did not dare to believe it. Of course, my life was the most comfortable in my era with Huang. If not for the fact that I couldn't bear to part with him, I would have left this planet long ago. He even took advantage of that to get me to create some Genesis rune barrier to hide planet Earth. Great, now the people inside can't get out and the people outside can't get in. Sigh, it made me stay here bitterly for so many years. After Zhou heard this, he was shocked. He did not expect this frog to be so powerful that it even knew about Huang. Chapter 508 Mental Health Master. Zhou was very shocked. There were probably not many people who knew about this, but this frog actually knew. It could be seen how powerful this frog was. Originally, Zhou had only thought that this was a boastful spirit pet. But now, it seemed that this guy was really as it said. Although Zhou was shocked, he remained calm as he said, did you know that he knows Genesis runes? When the frog heard this, it immediately smiled and could not help but say, of course, I was the one who helped him find his Genesis rune power. By the way, you might not know, but the Moro race is actually somewhat related to the psychic race. I have always felt that the Moro race are the descendants of the physic race and had inherited their bloodline. After the frog finished speaking, Zhou was very shocked and did not dare to believe it. If this frog had said so, it was probably not fake. Alright, let's not talk about this anymore. You don't understand this Moro race territory at all. How about this? I'll bring you to a good place. How about that? The frog immediately smiled. When Zhou heard this, he felt that what it said was somewhat unreliable. Where is it? Zhou asked. The Moro race's mental graveyard, the frog immediately said. Mental graveyard? What does that mean? Zhou frowned. Although he did not know what this place was, he felt that it sounded a little terrifying. Of course it's a graveyard. However, after a person from the Moro race dies, their body will be burned. As for their mental strength, it will be preserved and buried in the mental graveyard. And this mental graveyard has a special magnetic field that can preserve the mental strength of some powerful mental strength masters. You can also understand it as eternal life. The frog's words shocked Zhou. He had never expected something like this to exist. Wasn't this too strange? Eternal life? How was this possible? Humph, brat, there are still many things in this world that you have yet to see. Have you seen a tree the size of a star system where every leaf is a separate world? Have you seen the flowing star sea? Any star in it is an independent life form comparable to a cosmic level big shot. Have you seen a wormhole that can devour everything and leads to a world that is completely different from this world? Do you know that there is a huge butterfly in the universe? If this butterfly flaps its wings once, it will destroy an entire galaxy. At the same time, it can also create galaxies. And it will only do so once every 100 eras. Zhou was shocked with every word the frog said. He had never heard of such things even in science fiction movies. Are you shocked? Are you shocked? Kid, you still have a long way to go and you won't be able to experience any of these things anytime soon. However, since I'm by your side, I'll definitely bring you to see these things one day. The frog patted Zhou's head and said earnestly and pretentiously. Zhou was extremely depressed, but he still said, since you said that there's something good in the mental graveyard, let's go. As the frog spoke, it identified the direction and got Zhou to speed away. On the way, the frog said, I've been to the mental graveyard once. Those old guys there are almighty and rich figures. If we can take out something good, they might exchange it with us. What do you mean? Zhou asked curiously. There has always been a special profession that works in the mental graveyard of the Moro race. It's called a mental health master. These people's main responsibility is to take care of the mental strength master's mental state. However, this mental health master is not for nothing. Every time this mental health master helps them replenish their mental strength, they need to pay. Therefore, let's pretend to be this mental health master today. After saying this, Zhou was a little confused. He could be said to be completely clueless. He did not know anything the frog was saying. What should we do? Zhou immediately said. Don't do anything. Leave everything to me. With that said, the frog immediately tore off its red cloak and let out the white jelly. Change quickly. When the white jelly heard this, it immediately shouted, You evil thing, you actually want to do that shameless thing again. You. Stop talking nonsense and quickly change. Otherwise, I'll throw you into a group of sexually deprived burly men and make you wish you were dead. The frog immediately threatened. When the white jelly heard this, it was immediately frightened. Without saying a word, it immediately squirmed and turned into a human-shaped armor. It looked very mechanical. This was the attire of a mental health master. If we want to pretend to be one, we have to commit to the act. After the frog finished speaking, it let Zhou enter the armor. Zhou originally thought that it would be very heavy, but after entering, it only felt cool and light. In a while, after we get there, don't say a word. I'll handle everything. As long as you do as I say, you'll be fine, understand? After the frog finished instructing, Zhou nodded and quickly arrived at a strange place. The mental world of the Moro race was very abstract everywhere. At this moment, they had arrived at a triangular building. Zhou did not know what to do. Don't be afraid. You'll land at the door and there will be equipment to check on us. Don't worry, this divine soil expert can create any aura and confuse all senses. Now, you're a mental health master, don't worry. The frog's voice sounded in Zhou's head. Zhou also gathered his courage and walked to the triangular building. Immediately, a beam of light swept out from the triangle and landed on Zhou. Then, the system's voice sounded. Respected mental health master, please enter. With that said, a gap immediately opened in the triangular building. Then, something that was floating like an iron plate flew out. Stand on it. It will bring us in, the frog said directly. Zhou did as he was told. After stepping on it, it immediately formed a light barrier that carried Zhou into the triangular space. After entering, his surroundings were as black as ink. Just as Zhou was feeling puzzled, a screen appeared in front of him, and a lot of information appeared. The Moro race's 7th elder, Mo Dongjian, had a mental state of 30%. The vice commander of the Moro race's 3rd generation intelligence team, Mo Hai Rui, had a mental state of 17%. The Moro race's 5th-generation security team leader, Mo Long, had a mental state of 21%. There were thousands of names displayed on the screen, followed by a mental state column. Although Zhou Hao did not understand, he could guess that the lower his mental state was, the worse it was. He even saw many names turn grey and their mental states were O. Needless to say, these people were definitely dead. Respected mental health master, please choose your next patient. Chapter 509 Very Cunning. When Zhou Hao heard this, he did not act rashly. Instead, he listened to the frog's arrangements. Indeed, it spoke up. We can choose 6 people from here. Remember, it can only be 6 people. We can't choose too many. If we choose too many, there will be problems. We can choose a few with rich family backgrounds and poor mental strength. Those with 30% can still persist and would not easily give in to our demands. So let's choose those with less than 10%. At this moment, they will definitely be anxious to receive our help. Even if we ask for a lot, they won't be able to do anything. Zhou Hao thought to himself that this guy was really cunning, but he still followed his instructions obediently. Under the frog's guidance, he clicked on 6 names. After the 6 names were clicked, the screen disappeared. Then, light sprinkled down, and 6 tunnels appeared in different locations. We're going to their mental world. Let's go. Any one of them is fine. We're going to start our scheme. He. The frog was very excited, and Zhou Hao also casually walked into one of them. Soon, they arrived at the end of a path. The light instantly brightened. Immediately after, Zhou Hao saw a strange place. This was a paradise-like place with dense green plants, green smoke, and green water around it. In this immortal realm, there was a huge villa with a pool, garden, and even a good fighter plane in a very strange shape. Zhou Hao blinked. He did not know if this was the real world or not, but since he was here, he still walked over. Just as Zhou Hao stepped in, the entire space flashed with a light. A crystal coffin slowly floated out of the house. Then, the coffin door opened and Zhou Hao saw a man in pajamas with closed eyes walk out. Humph, why did you take so long to come? Are those bastard sons of mine outside unwilling to spend money on me? That person had just come out and was already filled with resentment. Zhou Hao naturally understood why. After all, this guy already had 5% mental strength and would die soon. Therefore, he was naturally furious. A mental health master can only treat 6 people at a time. Thus, every trip was very precious. The living people outside needed to more or less provide benefits for these mental health masters for them to give the treatment. The patients are also only unable to sense the outside world and are unaware of the things happening outside. Since this guy had not received treatment for so many years, he will definitely think that his descendants outside are either dead or were indifferent. That's why he's so furious. The frog's voice sounded in Zhou Hao's mind before he spoke. Respected Senior Mo Tiantu, I've prepared 3 high-quality spirit body fluids for you this time. I hope you like them. The frog's voice sounded. It did not have anything else. Instead, it took out a box from the white jelly armor. Inside were 3 items that looked like medicine. Zhou Hao frowned. This thing was definitely not something they originally had. It must have been created by the white jelly. In other words, this thing was fake. Zhou Hao immediately took a deep breath and thought to himself that the frog was really bold. It even dared to lie to a dead person. However, after hearing the frog say this, Mo Tiantu was immediately excited. 3 high-quality spirit body fluids? That's awesome. As he spoke, he was about to take it, but the frog directly waved its hand, and its entire body emitted a strange fluctuation. Senior Mo Tiantu, I'm sorry. I want to charge you some money for these 3 liquids. The clansmen you left outside are not doing so well. They said that you brought some things here and asked me to ask you for compensation. Zhou Hao blinked and listened to the frog speak nonsense without saying a word. Hearing the frog finish speaking, Mo Tiantu was furious. Damn, this group of trash. I was the third elder of the Moro race back then. My lineage is one of the strongest 3 lineages in the Moro race. I forcefully fought my way through the world, but I never expected to have such an ending because of the incompetence of my descendants. How tragic, how tragic! Mo Tiantu was very furious and could not help but roar. The frog did not say a word and just looked at him. After roaring for a while, Mo Tiantu seemed to have lost all his strength. He sat on the ground and sighed. I only brought those things to ensure the survival of my mental strength. I was planning to use them to exchange for a chance of going back once the Moro race develops a way to manifest my body. However, I didn't expect that those descendants of mine aren't even able to pay for my treatment. What trash! He shook his head helplessly and waved his hand to take out a box. Inside this box is the Super Point Body Tempering Fluid. This thing is incomparably precious. There are only 3 of them in the entire Moro race. I kept this and originally thought that I could last until I could revive and use it to temper my new body and live for another 100 years. However, I didn't expect to take it out now. By now, you should know how precious this thing is. The frog saw this and nodded. That's right. This item is indeed very precious. I'm willing to take it. Wait. Mo2 immediately waved his hand and stopped the frog before saying. 3 spirit body fluids are not enough. Such a treasure has to be exchanged for at least 10. This guy was really greedy. Zhou Hao did not care at all. It was all fake after all. In fact, the white jelly could probably even materialize 100 of them. He originally thought that the frog would immediately agree, but he unexpectedly refused. Sorry, Senior Mo Tiantu, I can only give you 5. The frog's words stunned Zhou Hao for a moment. This guy was too stingy. They were fake. As if it knew what Zhou Hao was thinking, the frog could not help but say, the spirit body fluid is very precious. If I give him 10 at once, he will definitely be suspicious. Moreover, we have the ability to decide his fate right now. He will definitely accept it. I'm doing this to show my attitude. Mental health masters are all arrogant people, understand? When Zhou Hao heard this, he thought to himself that this frog was really cunning. It turned out that it was very good at this. However, what it said was true. The mental health masters had always been a bunch of prideful folk. If he did not act the part, the other party would definitely see through their act. Therefore, there was nothing wrong with doing this. 5 is too few, at least 8. Mo2 said directly. Senior Mo Tiantu, 5 at most. 7. No, 5. 6. Mo Tiantu pressed forward step by step. The frog immediately snorted. Senior Mo Tiantu, there are many people waiting for me to do business. Don't waste time. You're not the only elder in this mental graveyard. Moreover, your item is indeed expensive in the outside world, but it's not worth mentioning here. Chapter 510, The Second Patient. After the frog finished speaking, Mo Tiantu's expression immediately turned ugly. It also knew that it was at the other party's mercy. Moreover, the juniors outside were already unreliable. The only thing he could rely on now was the mental health master. Alright, 5 is fine. May I ask when you'll be coming next time, sir? I still have some treasures here. Can you come and exchange them with me next time? Mo Tiantu thought it through and pleaded. What treasures do you have? Show them to me, the frog immediately said. I have a cultivation technique that can train one's mental strength and allow one to enter the life realm. Mo Tiantu immediately said. The frog smiled. Senior Mo, cultivation techniques that train mental strength are the cheapest in the Moro race. Sorry. By the way, don't consume the high-quality spirit liquid immediately. When your mental state reaches 3%, it will be more effective for you to consume 3 at the same time. As he spoke, he said to Zhou Hao, let's go. Zhou Hao immediately left, but he still asked curiously, is what you said true? Are you telling the truth? Like hell it is. That thing can last for 6 hours. After 6 hours, it will transform into its original form. I'm saying this so that he won't be in a hurry to consume it. Otherwise, won't we be exposed? Zhou Hao was impressed when he heard this. However, can we fool them all in 6 hours? Zhou Hao hurriedly asked. The frog laughed when it heard this. Haha, kid. I couldn't tell that you were even greedier than me. Do you really think we can trick 6 people? The reason why I asked you to click on 6 names is because it's a rule. I think it's already good enough that we can trick 3 people. After tricking 3, we'll leave this place immediately before they can react. Otherwise, it's easy for something to happen. When Zhou Hao heard this, he also broke out in a cold sweat. If Motianta was disobedient, wouldn't he be done for? Alright, since we've already committed to it, stop thinking about it. My life motto is don't regret what you've already done. On to the next. 1. The frog was very open-minded. Zhou Hao secretly admired it. This guy was much more cunning than he had imagined. Zhou Hao walked into the next tunnel and finally arrived at a sinister and terrifying place. It was dark and red here with green smoke floating around. It looked very terrifying. At this moment, a coffin covered in moss slowly floated out of the void and a man in a demon robe walked out. Seeing this person, the frog blinked. I didn't expect it to be someone from the Moro race's White Tiger Hall. Zhou Hao was stunned for a moment. What do you mean? Shouldn't the name White Tiger Hall tell you everything you need to know? This guy is a violent person. He's not easy to deal with. Then let's go. Zhou Hao hurriedly said. What's there to leave for? This guy is definitely a rich person. The people from the White Tiger Hall are all freaking rich. Let's trick him. After the frog finished speaking, it said, Respected Senior White Tiger Hall's Mo Shat, I'm very happy to be at your service. A mental health master? Why haven't you come to my place for so long? After Mo Sha appeared, he looked at Zhou Hao and snorted. Sorry, Senior Mo Sha. You know that we only take in 1 disciple. Therefore, I'm quite busy, the frog said with a smile. It could be seen that the frog was still very afraid of this person. Humph, it's all just excuses. Do you think I don't know that you're all a bunch of ungrateful bastards? What did you bring this time? Mo Sha could not be bothered to waste his breath and asked directly. Senior Mo Sha, I've carefully prepared 3 special grade spirit body fluids for you this time. If you use them, you can recover to 30%. The frog immediately said. Oh? Only 3? Mo Sha immediately said. That's right. Only 3. You know that this thing is very difficult to refine, the frog said respectfully. What about the others? Did you bring any good ones, intermediate level ones, and low level ones? Mo Sha said indifferently. I have them all. Does Mo Sha want some? The frog was stunned. Yes, hand over half of everything you have, Mo Sha immediately ordered. The frog smiled. Senior Mo Sha, I can give it to you, but these things are not cheap. You have to consider it carefully. Not cheap? What, you still dare to ask me for money? Are you trying to make money from me? Do you want to die? When Mo Sha heard this, it immediately snorted and said angrily. Sorry, Senior Mo Sha. I have to make a living, so there's nothing I can do. Please forgive me. If you need it, we can exchange. If you don't want to exchange, then you'll have to forgive me. The frog said directly. Humph, you're already here and yet you still want to leave? Since you're asking for it, don't blame me. I'll make sure you leave everything behind. Mo Sha was immediately filled with killing intent. The entire mental space exploded with a bang, and a powerful mental strength spread out with a bloody smell. Senior Mo Sha, please reconsider. I'm a mental health master. You're breaking the rules by doing this, the frog immediately said. What rules? Do you really think you're some big shot? Die. With that said, Mo Sha waved his hand, condensing a mental storm in the air that bombarded Zhou Hao. Zhou Hao's expression changed drastically when he saw this. This mental strength was too freaking powerful. It was at least the strength of a 12th grade Heaven Realm expert. This was even when his mental strength was less than 10%. If he was at his peak, who knew what realm he would have reached? As Zhou Hao was shocked, the frog snorted and waved its hand. Waves of fluctuations emitted from the armor, spreading a signal that directly connected to the triangular building. Immediately, an extremely ancient aura erupted. A huge hand condensed in this space and crushed the storm. Senior Mo Sha, you're really forgetful. Our mental health masters are well protected in the mental graveyard. If you want to kill me here, you're simply dreaming. Moreover, you've triggered the taboo here, so no one can save you. The frog snorted. It's just a mere system's will. You really think you can suppress me? What a joke. Mo Sha was filled with killing intent and his tone was even domineering. He directly expanded its aura. Immediately, a storm that was more than 5 times stronger than before erupted. Mo Sha has broken the rules of the mental graveyard. System has activated the clearance command. A cold system voice sounded. Then, 10,000 beams of light spread out, turning into powerful chains that directly broke through Mo Sha's defense and tied him up. As for Mo Sha, his expression immediately changed. No.